Hi, and thank you for joining me. Thank you. Welcome back. Now, in today's video, what I'm going to be talking about is the fourth in the series of Hemiolia Hermitage tape releases, and this one is, I think probably one of the first sort of mainstream bossa nova albums, Getz Gilberto, with Stan Getz on saxophone, and forgive my pronunciation if I get this wrong, but Getz Gilberto on guitar and vocals. And quite famously, this also features Astrid Gilberto, who was Jo's wife, and not a professional singer, but she just stood in sort of at the last minute on the session and sang a couple of songs, but very famously the Girl From Ipanema, which has become one of the most enduring jazz hits, popular hits of ever, really. And it makes this album an absolute must-have. So, just to sort of, for those of you who haven't heard of these before, and I say I've done, as well as the Kind of Blue, there was Charles Mingus which I'll put a link to here, and also John Coltrane, Blue Train, put another link up there. And those are the first three of these Hemiolia tapes. Now, you may be thinking, hell's teeth, how on earth can we be getting these, kind of master recordings available on tape? And it's basically down to Hermitage, an Italian, primarily independent classical music label that was launched in the mid-80s. They also set up a division, Hermitage Opera Leader Limited, which was basically the reissue and distribution department of the overall company. And this business is run by a chap by let me just check my notes. Gianni Salvioni, and Signor Salvioni arranged licenses to publish all these albums. I've actually made a list going through Discogs and various other places, just searching for albums that have been released underneath this sort of family of labels, and I found at least 60, and there's 6 or 7, maybe 8 Miles Davis, there's Chet Baker, Billie Holiday, Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, John Coltrane, Ornette Coleman. The list goes on, and of all absolute killer jazz titles. So the Hemiolia, Italian sort of boutique kind of master tape label, have done a deal with Hermitage, and now basically are operating as a subcontractor to take the existing license and produce these tapes. And these tapes, let me show you, they are utterly divine. So I'll get back to the paperwork, but this is what you're buying in here. A beautiful box. This is solid wood insert, absolutely beautiful. But look at these things. It's this is Recording the Masters SM900 tape, which is their highest quality. Basically, it's the highest quality mastering tape you can get. I think that's fairly uncontentious thing for me to say. It's supremely high output. It is the best tape, blank tape you can get, and the reels are just beautifully produced in this sort of burnt orange colour. Lovely screen printed logos on it. Now, this particular album comes on one reel, and you can see the depth of the box here. It would actually hold 2 reels. The other 3 albums that have already been released actually come on 2 reels, one for each side of the record, and they consequently cost a bit more. The fact that this fits on 1 reel is purely because it's a shorter album initially, and they can fit it onto 1 reel. So in my book, that works really well, because you can just enjoy the whole album in one go, and you don't have to flip sides. So just to go through very briefly what you get, this is a sort of certificate of the quality and the sort of analog credentials, if you like, signed by Claudio Valieri on behalf of Hemiolia. And this is the serial number of this tape and the date it was produced. And then this is a technical sheet signed by Pietro Benini, who is Hemiolia's mastering engineer. And it goes through all the, really into great deep details of the recording, the tape, the copying, all that kind of stuff. It really does go into vast details. And this is even the kind of the serial number slip off of the original roll of blank tape. And I know that they even check the blank tape for blemishes before they make these copies. So you really are assured of getting something very, very special. And then here we have the kind of the track listing, that kind of stuff on a very beautifully sort of matte, almost rubberized piece of card. And it's a beautiful recording. It was the original recording was recorded in March 1963 by Phil Ramone, incidentally, and a record producer friend of mine's been around, and we listened to this together and compared it to vinyl, and this particular friend of mine has actually worked with Phil Ramone, so it's kind of a pretty cool kind of situation to be in. And it is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful album. Now let me just put the lid back on. So what I compared this to, if I just show you here, so this is my kind of go-to playing copy, and this is actually a UK reissue. It's not an original stereo, and I think this dates from sometime in the 70s, maybe even creeping into the early 80s. I can't tell you exactly when this was produced. And then also is this, which is actually an original first pressing, again UK, and in mono. And I've got a couple of interesting observations just between the mono and the stereo, and I'll just run through those first, because one thing, I will be putting a full in-depth written review of this on my Reel-to-Reel Rambler website, and I'll put a link to that down below in the description, where you can kind of hear in more detail my thoughts and findings. But even just starting off by setting the scene with these two, I have to say in this instance, and this is partly why I've got the two, I suppose, and kept hold of both of them. So the recording is just exquisitely sort of sweet, sugary, soft, delicious. It is absolutely divine and beautiful. But don't forget, it's a bossa nova tune, okay? So playing it in stereo, you get all this, just, the record starts with Joe's guitar pretty much in the center, and his voice, and then sort of as piano joins in, and sort of drums join in, bass joins in, and sax, and then Astrid, his wife, joins in with kind of the main vocal, and it all is just absolutely delicious, set in space, very warm, very sort of almost fluffy, and just delicious. You put this on, And there's a much more kind of urgent sense of pace and timing. So what I kind of worked out is going on here is, I mean, it's not unusual to get a little bit kind of more expression, a little bit more kind of passion in a mono cut, but you know, you sacrifice the stereo width and the kind of the hi-fi credentials, so to speak. And both of those happen here. So this seems a little bit more urgent, a little bit more paced, if you like. So, you know, they're kind of swings and roundabouts which one I would prefer out of these. But then we get to the tape. And honestly, you know, my friend, you know, as I say, he's a record producer, worked with Phil Ramone. You know, he felt exactly the same. The tape is, you know, cut to the chase, the tape is in another league. And this is as big a change, you know, it's a bigger change than you're likely to hear between two vinyl pressings ever. It really is massive. So let me just put these out the side. And it is massive. And the solidity, the realism, the expression, you know, the palpable sense of the musicians being there, and the feeling of exactly what they're doing is just so much there. But there's something I think I can kind of, you know, almost distill the differences down into what really is the key thing. And don't get me wrong, I'm not going to be diminishing the improvements that this gives, but it's kind of justifying them, if you like. Now, don't forget there's this bossa nova. So there's, in the background of it, there's this. It's sort of some of the time it's played on cymbals, some of the time it's on sort of shakers of some sort. I don't know what instruments they would be called, you know, specifically if they've got specific names. But think of a sort of a shaker. Sort of, it's just this sort of little kind of jig, samba-y kind of jig that's going on top of the, you know, the sort of, I mean, Zhao's vocals, like boom, 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 real soft, real creamy. The guitar is soft and creamy. It's, you know, obviously Spanish guitar, played beautifully. The sax just leaps out, and everything about this is seductive, creamy, delicious, and just achingly beautiful. But what the mono over the stereo has is kind of a dynamic pace and sense of timing. And that difference between the mono and the stereo is probably 10 times bigger. An order of magnitude from this to the mono, and then from the mono to the stereo. But of course, what you also get on this, and it is a stereo master, is you get that sense of spacing and the solidity of the soundstage. Again, an order of magnitude again above the stereo. So it's just amazing. It is one of the most beautiful albums. It was one of the first jazz albums I ever bought. It was one of those that got me into jazz. Excuse me, just a tick. It's absolutely beautiful. And, you know, you can buy it on CD, you can buy it on a cheap reissue. It doesn't really matter. It's going to sound good. You will love it. But you hear it on this, and going back to any other form just sounds really quite sad and not very good. And albums I buy on tape, I kind of typically keep at least one reference vinyl copy of. And in this instance, I'll probably keep the mono and the stereo. You know, this has been done on, you know, super high quality presses. I think Alanon Productions have done it. I think Speaker's Corner might have done it. I'm not sure. And you know, by all means, if you haven't got a tape deck that can play 15 IPS 2-track tapes, it doesn't actually matter whether it's CCIR or NAB. I've ordered all of mine, and the standard issue of this from Hemiolia is CCIR EQ, but they will make you a master copy on NAB EQ too, should your machine not be switchable and just have that equalization. So, you know, any 2-track 15 IPS reel-to-reel machine will play these. And if you can, it's just, you know, it's the new definitive version. I mean, the only thing I think that could or would ever sound better than this is if Verve Records got the original master and copied that and made their own version of this. But they'd have to, they'd be competing with Pietro's remastering, because this is remastered. Pietro's remastered all of the titles so far. And he's also done, he's done everything that Hemiolia has done in the past. A lot of their own new recordings. He's worked on some old historical recordings from Pavarotti. Yeah, these are really, really, really stunning. Now, the final thing to note is due to how these are coming about. So it's Hermitage have got a contract, a historical contract, which they are supposedly renewing, and I'm sure they are, because if they weren't, I'm quite convinced that Sony, Universal, Warner, whoever is the relevant copyright owner in each case would absolutely shut them down. I'm quite convinced of that. So I trust Salvioni's word that they are maintaining these contracts, and the contracts are in good order. And it's worth noting that on the back here we've got an SIAE sticker, and this is the I'll have to look this up, Italian Society of Authors and Publishers, and that is a royalty collection agency. So Hemiolia pay royalties to that organisation, who then obviously pass them on to the relevant parties, and they also pay a royalty to Hermitage, who then in turn pass that on to the the original source of whichever whoever owns the copyright for whatever recording. But because these aren't official original copyright owner, which this would be Verve, or I believe Universal now own Verve, they are not licensed for sale in the US. So for all US customers, you'd have to check the local legalities of this. So don't quote me on this and hold me to it. I'm just relaying what I believe to be the case. But I believe the case is you can, effectively, if you went abroad and bought one, then you're not breaking any laws. And I think you could then take it back home with you to the US. Similarly, I believe you could buy it in from overseas. Just like in the old days, we'd buy import releases, from, in the UK, we'd buy US imports or Japanese imports that weren't available in the UK. And, they weren't available in the UK because they were subject to different copyright laws. That's as I understand it. That may or may not be the case. I say I'm not going to stick my neck on the line here, but that is the the legal situation as I understand it. But anyway, so the retail price of these is €532.79. Obviously, you've got to add import duties, shipping, and the rest of it. VAT if you're buying it into the UK, for instance. And the 2-disc versions of the other albums that I mentioned, $778.69. So you save quite a bit by this being on one reel. And it's the fourth in quite simply, probably the most exciting series of copy masters that have been released so far. So on that note, I will say cheerio. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, please do hit the like button. If you like what I'm doing here on this channel, hit the subscribe button, and feel free to share. Love to read your comments, and I'll look forward to seeing you all again soon. Okay, bye now. Bye.